From JBS Studios in Greater New York, this is the JBS News Update with Teisha Bader.
I'm Teisha Bader with the JBS News Update for Monday, May the 6th, 2024. We open with reported claims from terror group Hamas that it has accepted a hostage deal with Israel. But as of the time of the taping of this newscast, the terms of the deal were unclear, with reports that those terms that Hamas says it agreed to are not what Israel had agreed to. This comes just ahead of Israel's expected ground operation in Rafah, seen as the last Hamas stronghold in Gaza. Later tonight, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said the Hamas response was far from meeting Israel's core demands, and that the war cabinet unanimously decided this evening Israel will continue its operation in Rafah in order to apply military pressure on Hamas so as to advance the release of our hostages and achieve the other objectives of the war. Also saying that Israel will dispatch a ranking delegation to Egypt in an effort to maximize the possibility of reaching an agreement on terms acceptable to Israel. 4 IDF soldiers were killed and 10 others injured in a rocket attack carried out by Hamas yesterday from Rafah at the Kerem Shalom area in southern Israel. They are 19-year-old Staff Sergeant Reuben Mark Mordechai Asulin, 19-year-old Staff Sergeant Ido Testa, 21-year-old Staff Sergeant Tal Shavit, and 18-year-old Sergeant Michael Ruzal. The IDF said 10 rockets were fired by Hamas from less than 400 yards away from Gaza civilian shelters in Rafah. The IDF saying this is another clear example of the systematic exploitation that the terrorist organization Hamas makes of humanitarian facilities and spaces for terrorist purposes, while using the civilian population as a human shield. The attack at Kerem Shalom shut down the Kerem Shalom crossing, where loads of humanitarian aid to Gaza have passed through. The IDF saying that while the IDF is facilitating humanitarian aid to the people of Gaza through the Kerem Shalom crossing, terrorists fire rockets into the same area. Israel remains committed to providing life-saving aid, while Hamas remains committed to destroying lives. After the rocket attack, Israeli fighter jets hit the rocket launcher that carried out the attack, as well as other terrorist infrastructure in Gaza. The IDF began calling on Palestinians to evacuate the eastern neighborhoods of Rafah today, dropping leaflets, sending text messages and phone calls and media broadcasts in Arabic, asking Gazans who live in those areas to temporarily move to an expanded humanitarian zone in Al-Mawasi. The new area includes, it said, field hospitals, tents, and increased amounts of food, water, medication, and additional supplies. U.S. President Joe Biden spoke this morning with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, where the White House said he reiterated his clear position on Rafah. The U.S. has repeatedly said it is opposed to a ground operation there, and saying that Netanyahu agreed to reopen the Kerem Shalom crossing for aid into Gaza. The White House saying also that the two discussed efforts to reach a hostage deal. The White House also said of the conversation this morning, which took place today on Yom HaShoah, Holocaust Remembrance Day, that the two leaders discussed the shared commitment of Israel and the United States to remember the 6 million Jews who were systematically targeted and murdered in the Holocaust, one of the darkest chapters in human history, and to forcefully act against anti-Semitism and all forms of hate-fueled violence. And the IDF continues to defend its northern border with Lebanon. Rockets continue to be fired by terror group Hezbollah in Lebanon at northern Israel, and Israel hitting terror targets in Lebanon. Well, sirens rang out across Israel today, marking Yom HaShoah, Holocaust Martyrs and Heroes Remembrance Day, bringing the state of Israel to a standstill. A wreath-laying ceremony was held today at Yad Vashem in Jerusalem, where the official state ceremony began last night with the participation of Holocaust survivors and Israel's leaders, including Prime Minister Netanyahu and Israel's President Isaac Herzog. Netanyahu spoke of the genocide of the Shoah and the atrocities committed by Hamas on October the 7th, vowing that Israel would stand firm against present-day threats.
80 years ago, in the Holocaust, the Jewish people were totally defenseless against those who sought our destruction. No nation came to our aid. Today, we again confront enemies bent on our destruction. I say to the leaders of the world, no amount of pressure, no decision by any international forum will stop Israel from defending itself.
President Herzog also spoke of the Hamas massacre. In his remarks, he said, "The wounds of October the 7th are still open in our hearts. We mourn, and we will not be able to remain silent as long as our brothers and sisters are kidnapped by Hamas murderers." 6 Holocaust survivors lit 6 torches symbolizing the 6 million Jews, men, women, and children murdered by the Nazis during the Holocaust. These survivors wearing yellow ribbon pins for the hostages. The ceremony ending with Israel's national anthem, Hatikva, the Hope. And the annual March of the Living took place today on the grounds of Auschwitz, where dozens of Holocaust survivors joined Jews and non-Jews from around the world to make the 1.2-mile march from Auschwitz to Birkenau. Among them, survivors of the October 7th massacre, like Israeli-American Natalie Sanandaji, who survived the Nova Music Festival massacre, and family members of October 7th survivors, like the father of released hostage Emily Hand, Thomas Hand. And several of the Holocaust survivors who took part in the march today suffered losses from October the 7th, including the Times of Israel reported 86-year-old Bella Chaim, whose grandson Yotam was kidnapped by Hamas on that day. Yotam was later tragically mistakenly killed by the IDF in a case of mistaken identity. Chaim saying, "I'm here to show we are alive. We have risen from the Holocaust and we will rise again from October the 7th. Yuval Danzig's 75-year-old father, Alex Danzig, is still being held hostage in Gaza, now for 213 days. Alex Danzig has worked at Yad Vashem for over 3 decades, a Holocaust historian and educator. Taking a look now at our programming for tonight on JBS for Monday, May the 6th at 7 o'clock. Hear from Holocaust survivor William Berhnheim. At 8, Abigail Pogrebin is joined by CEO of Project Kesher, Karyn Grossman Gershon, to talk about her programs that build intergenerational Jewish life, advance gender equality, and promote public health and wellness. At 8:30, FIDF CEO Steve Weil speaks with Jonathan Schanzer to break down a potential new phase of the Gaza war, the Turks closing trade with Israel, hostage deal discussions, activity on the Lebanon border, and more. At 9, Rita Rubin Long talks about her experience on the Kent State campus during the tragic events there on May the 4th of 1970. At 10, it's Good Week Israel, which is also coming up next. At 10:30, a replay of this newscast. And that's the JBS News Update for Monday, May the 6th, 2024. I'm Teisha Bader. Am Yisrael Chai.